overheard my fiancée telling her friends that my money was my greatest asset, so I humiliated her by making a mess of her house. Now I'm going to sue her to make sure she doesn't get a penny. I'm 29 years old, I have an MBA and a very cushy job at my father's company. I know this sounds like a snobby rich kid, but please hear me out. We didn't have it easy growing up, we struggled a lot, and the family was in debt. I was young at the time, so I didn't understand all the details, but my father took out a very risky loan against our house. It was the only thing of value we had, as it was my grandfather's house. This loan helped him start his own business. Despite the difficult start, things finally got better and better. It wasn't easy, but in retrospect, I'm really glad I didn't come from a wealthy family, because I think it made me more down-to-earth and made me appreciate the value of hard work. This prompted me to pursue an MBA because I wanted to add value to the business my father had built. Although I say that, it sounds as if I'm a good-for-nothing who lives off the family connections, but I admit that I am in a way. But I also know that I have earned my current position. I work hard and have contributed my efforts to the development of the company. Because of this, my family is now quite wealthy, and I have personally become very wealthy. I know that we will never have so much money again, so this is a great fortune. I have always been very cautious in my relationships because I personally feel that you have to work very hard to find someone who is not superficial. With my wealth, I think it is a bit difficult to find someone who is sincere and not just focused on your bank account. When I was in my 20s, things were in full swing. I dated a lot of people, but many of them only once. I may have only gone out on 3 dates, and I can count them on one hand. About 2.5 years ago, I met someone, and to be honest, she was very pretty. I saw her smile and couldn't help but go over and say hello. Later I found out her name was Brianna, which of course wasn't her real name, and that she was a nurse. I think that made me like her even more, because I have a lot of respect for the profession. I asked for her phone number on the spot, and that's how our relationship started. I've always been cautious in relationships, and once I get started, I think about distance. Before getting serious about a relationship, I always try to see if I can see my wife in someone. I think that's why I always try to make sure that I'm only spending at most 1/4 of my money with someone. It would be foolish of me to assume that this doesn't make me more attractive to women. But I don't want to be in a relationship with anyone who thinks that's the main reason for being with me. Honestly, I don't see any of the behavior of a gold-digging woman. When I'm with Brianna, she's smart, charming, and funny, and she always meets all my needs. 2 years and a few months after we met, I proposed to her and she said yes. Brianna is my fiancée, and I feel incredibly happy that she agreed to spend the rest of her life with me. Now I'll get to the point, but before I do, there's one big thing that made me, well, I think it's worth mentioning here. Obviously, as we got closer, she learned more about my family's financial situation, and she knew that my family wasn't poor and that we were doing well, so a few months after proposing, I brought up the idea of buying a property. Honestly, it seemed like a very reasonable discussion, but she obviously didn't see it that way, and she was furious with me. According to her, there were 2 major disadvantages for her in my suggesting that we buy a property. First, it seemed to me that I didn't believe in the long-term future of our relationship, which of course wasn't true, but even if I gave 110% in the marriage, there was nothing I could do if she woke up one day and decided to split. The second reason is that it means I don't trust her not to do something to upset me, and that's the bottom line. But we ended up going back and forth for a whole hour, furious with each other, and after thinking about it all night, I told her that it wasn't necessary. Yes, I know it's stupid, but I love her so much that I'd rather let go than let a prenup be the reason we break up. Things got better between us very quickly. After all that, I really needed a third party to tell me what to do. A colleague of my fiancé was throwing a barbecue party, and she invited me to go along. I thought it would be a good opportunity to get to know her colleagues, as she had mentioned it so often. When I arrived, everyone was very nice to me, and it was a really nice time. I met a lot of the nurses who worked with her, and at one point I was outside chatting about sports and stocks with someone I knew, while she was inside chatting with her girls. It was nothing, but then I needed to go pee, so I went back inside through the back door. I don't know how to describe it, but the back door leads to a hallway, and at the end of the hallway is the living room. Standing at the back door, you can't see the people sitting in the living room. At least not when you turn the corner. I was on my way to the bathroom, and I heard the voices of my fiancé and the others. From the first sentence, I knew very clearly that I had become the topic of conversation. They first discussed how well-dressed I was, and then naturally moved on to how expensive my clothes were. Then it came to money, and the girls discussed how lucky she was to have found a rich man, chattering and giggling, and then I heard my fiancé say it felt like a punch in the stomach. He has a lot of money, and to be honest, his money is the best part of him. Then she giggled and added that he wanted a Porsche. I said of course not, that I would have to be able to cash in if things got bad. Home, she noticed something was wrong with me, but I didn't tell her what was going on until she went to bed. This happened a few days ago, and now I don't know what to do. She's a great person, and I love her very much, but I'm struggling with myself to figure out whether I should just let things take their course or cancel our wedding plans and sweep her out of the house. Honestly, I don't know what to do. My rational mind tells me to end it, because this is the last thing I ever wanted. A few days ago, she was the perfect woman for me, and I hate that it has changed so quickly. My heart tells me to talk about it, but I really can't think of a way to do it. Thanks for all the advice. Edit 1. I see a lot of people saying that I should never have compromised on the prenup and that I should just end it. A lot of you say this in unnecessarily harsh ways, but I have a thick skin. I probably wouldn't have made different choices if I had it to do again, but I do agree that I would give the same advice to someone else. Many of you have given me advice here that I should actually stick to my guns, because even if I decided to stay with her, the comments I overheard made me realize how important a prenup would be for her. Edit 2. I tend to agree with the comments that I should end the relationship immediately rather than risk being with someone who has already made it clear that my money is their main interest. The only problem is that I feel that the best case scenario is that I may need to discuss a prenup with her again. I know it would protect me, but not necessarily make her less interested in my money, but isn't it natural that someone would appreciate a rich man? Edit 3. Well, I've listened to a lot of people's opinions, and I'll still discuss the prenup and see what she has to say, but I'm ready to end the relationship. I love Bree so much, so it's much easier for me to let her go than to say it. I wonder if I gave the relationship a chance. Update. This is an update. I know a lot of you have been waiting to hear my fiancé's side of the story. I caught her red-handed telling her friends that my money was the best part of me. Things are over, and I'm very happy with how things turned out, so the first thing I needed to do was discuss the prenup with Brianna again. I think it was about a week after we got back from the barbecue, and I asked her to sit down so we could discuss it. I told her that we needed to discuss the prenup again, and just like last time, she went into a rage. I think the second time was worse, and she again said that it was just a sign that I didn't trust her and didn't support the relationship. I tried to change the subject, saying that it was more about protecting my father's hard work and that I owned a pretty big part of his company, not myself, but she disagreed. She kept rambling on, and I really tried my best to make her understand my perspective, but it was useless. I asked her if she would marry me if I insisted that we must get married. She didn't seem to think about it for long and said she would reconsider our future together. I think that was the moment I realized I could not win her heart. I let her know that after the first time, I intended to never bring it up again, so I let her guess why I had brought it up again. Understandably, she had no idea, so I told her I would help her figure it out. I asked her to think back to what we had discussed with her nurse colleagues at her friend's barbecue. She just said that we had talked about many things, that I don't know what you are talking about, that you don't remember laughing and playing with your friends, that as you said, my money is the best part of me. And that you don't remember telling them why you couldn't play poker with me because you didn't want to win the jackpot in case we got divorced. Obviously, she remembered what I was talking about because she started to tremble and act very anxious. I waited for her to confirm or deny what I had said, but she didn't say anything. I urged her to speak, but she just looked at me. Her hands were shaking, and I don't know why, but it made me laugh, and I think my laughter made her start crying. She didn't say anything to me about what I had just said, and I started to get angry. She didn't say anything, and I wanted a reaction from her, so I let her know that the wedding was not going to happen again. At that point, she collapsed to the ground, and I started to hear her mother between her crying and sobbing, repeatedly saying words like, "please," in her mouth. I got up, went back to our room, locked the door, and went to bed. The next morning, she waited up for me and looked like she hadn't slept a wink. She came running over to me as soon as she saw me, really excited, but I pushed her away. She started trying to explain what I had overheard. She claimed she was just trying to fit in with the whole gossip girl vibe, and that she wasn't really accusing her friends and colleagues of having a bad influence on her, like I had heard. She claimed that my money had never been one of the reasons she fell in love with me. At first I believed this might be true, but I felt she was starting to love money more and more. She said she would sign a prenuptial agreement, which was no problem for her. She said all this, but I had nothing to say. I took her hand, looked tenderly into her eyes, and slowly removed the engagement ring from her finger. The ring I had spent so much money on had ended up in the hands of someone like her, which made her very angry. She started to cry, but soon turned to cursing me. She called me ugly, unattractive, and small-penised, and called me gay. She said she had slept with a guy she met in a bar because she thought it would be fun. I don't know if you believe me, but honestly, it doesn't matter now. She said my money was the only thing worth anything about me, and she wished she could just drain me of more of it. She said just about every insult she could think of. I couldn't help laughing, and she started throwing things at me. I tried to remain silent, but she started throwing some very dangerous things, so I retreated to my room and locked myself in. I think after about 2 hours things calmed down and I finally came out. She was gone, but had left a complete mess. I was so angry that I was convinced I had made the right decision. I filmed everything I could and recovered some footage from one of the indoor cameras. Then I left the house and went to sleep at a hotel because honestly, it was such a mess there that I didn't even know where to start cleaning up the mess. I decided to start with the entertainment, so I went to her Facebook page and Instagram page and looked for the post where she announced her engagement on each platform, and then I drafted a message. It is with regret that I inform you that the wedding is off and I am no longer engaged to Brianna. She admitted that she was only with me for my money, and when I confronted her, she lost her mind and trashed my house. I replied to her, "If you have any questions." She hates to make a fool of herself in front of others, so that part 1 got a lot of satisfaction out of. Then I posted my own posts showing the damage she had caused and some short clips of her throwing a tantrum and smashing up the house. I tagged her family and friends, and even the hospital where she worked. The last one was for fun. It was also good that the coworkers started talking about her. Her parents tried to contact me several times, but I didn't pick up. To be honest, I had to cut ties with them, which was awful, because they were both really nice people, but that was the way it had to be. After I had done all that, she called me dozens of times, and once I picked up, she started crying and threatening to kill me because I had ruined her life. I really didn't think that everything I had done was permanent, so she was just exaggerating. She screamed and shouted that I had humiliated her because of the short video I posted, and that people were now calling her Brianna from Tars Island behind her back because of the aggressive way she behaved in the video. I thought the video was really funny. She kept crying and saying that now everyone was looking at her differently. I won't deny that I was a little worried about her doing something crazy, because she was having a fit at home and it wasn't like Brianna that I knew. In the end, nothing happened. At least not yet. I called the event planner and told her to cancel everything wedding-related. This part was very sad for me, I admit, but I had to do it. Once it was done, I knew it was over between us. The best part for me was that I was going to sue her for damages for destroying my property. I demanded that she pay me a good amount of money, but she just cursed me a few nasty words, so I don't mind putting her under more pressure, just so she has to hire a lawyer, lose work days, and finally compensate me for all the things she destroyed. Believe me, the losses are huge, and it's still in the process of dealing with, but I recorded her losing her temper, and I've spoken to a lawyer, so there's really nothing to worry about. She won't get away with it this time. I still feel a little hurt because after all the hope I had, it didn't work out in the end. But I'm glad I found out how she really felt about me a little sooner rather than later. I'd rather suffer now than suffer more later. Thank you all so much, especially for the help with my previous post. I will read all your comments, so please tell me what you think about my revenge. A quick update. Oh, and just a quick update for anyone who might be reading this right now. She destroyed things in my apartment, including hotel costs, because I couldn't sleep there, and professional cleaning costs, because the whole place was a mess, and I was awarded $987. I had a big smile on my face because I actually got money from her after we broke up. I think she should be ashamed now. Story 2. I overheard my wife chatting with her app on the phone and later found out that she was having a sandwich with her ex-husband and his girlfriend, so I told everyone at the family dinner. My wife and I had been married for just over a year when I discovered her affair. Before I met Sarah, we were family friends, and our families knew each other. In fact, her mother was a very close friend of my mother's. Somehow, their relationship carried over to us. I had been secretly in love with Sarah for some time, but after she married her ex-husband, my feelings for her gradually faded, and I continued living my life. Unfortunately, 2 years after she got married, she got divorced because of her husband's infidelity. I was there for her and supported her as she dealt with the divorce, and in the process we fell in love. I asked her to marry me, and she said that I was nothing like her ex-husband and that she wished she had met me before she married him. I loved Sarah so much that soon after her divorce I invited her to move in with me. I had known her for years, and since Sarah and I started dating, I had hoped that we would live together. I was not in a relationship at the time and I wanted to settle down. I was tired of being single, and when I asked her to move in with me, she immediately agreed. We started dating. We dated for 9 months, and I felt it was time to make things official when I woke up every morning and saw her. We had a small wedding with just our friends and family, and it was perfect. Marrying Sarah was like a dream come true. I love her so much, and she loves me so much. She takes care of me, cleans the house, and does all the necessary household chores. She is very caring, and I always look forward to seeing her when I get home from work. Even after we got married, we still insisted on having family gatherings once every 2 months. Our parents and siblings who are free would get together at my parents' or her parents' house, and we would have dinner together as a family. Our lives are very happy, and we have hardly encountered any problems, except for the fact that I forget to take out the trash. After Sarah divorced her ex-husband, she told me she would no longer have contact with him, especially since they had ended their relationship in an unpleasant way. I believed her because I had seen the extent of the damage he had caused her, and I knew she was leaving someone she had been in a relationship with for 4 years and married for 3 years, so during that time I comforted and encouraged her as much as I could. We didn't have children and didn't consider having any because Sarah didn't want children. She would rather have a dog or a bird, and I agreed with her as long as she was ready to become a parent. Anyway, I don't like children, and I agreed that we should get a pet, and even though our parents tried to convince us, telling us all the wonderful things about having children and why they are important, we still didn't let them convince us. Now, as I write this, I'm grateful that I didn't let my parents convince me, because I might be raising another man's child, so it all happened. One day, Sarah and I were watching a movie together in the living room, as we often did, when I realized I couldn't find my phone, but I hadn't really lost it. I had the bad habit of dropping my phone somewhere and forgetting about it. I first looked all over the couch and then the entire living room, but I couldn't find it. She didn't help me look either, because it wasn't the first or second time that had happened that week. The worst part was that I liked to have my phone on silent, so even though I dialed the number, I needed to walk from the room to the kitchen to the bathroom, and after a few minutes of searching, I could hear the vibration, and I was already frustrated. I asked Sarah for the phone so I could walk around the house and listen for the vibration. She handed it over, which distracted us from the movie we were watching. Because it was a long-awaited series, she was so engrossed that she didn't even notice when I left. I checked the kitchen, the laundry room, I had just finished doing the laundry before we watched the movie, the bedroom, and finally I found my phone in the bathroom, where I had left it after using the toilet. I was a little relieved, because in less than 10 minutes I had to go to a work meeting. Just as I was about to leave the bedroom, a WhatsApp group chat notification suddenly popped up on her screen. The group chat name was a little strange, and it was plastered with sexy emojis. Out of curiosity, I opened the group chat to see what the message was. At first glance, I knew what it was about, but I wanted to know why my wife was in such a group chat. It wasn't until I read the messages that I realized my wife had been cheating on me behind my back, and the heartbreaking part was that she was cheating with her ex-husband and his girlfriend. They had been exchanging all kinds of nasty messages in the group chat, and as far as I could tell, they had been keeping the threesome going, even having sex that week and already planning the next one. Trying to lighten the mood, I honestly stood there for almost a minute, shocked, trying to process what I had just read. It was shocking to think that the two of us had been talking about her ex on the same day, her cursing him out and wishing him all the bad things in the world. I knew I had to read their messages over and over again, read their messages to make sure I wasn't imagining things, so I took screenshots of the messages I saw. Photos of her ex-husband and his mistress, just in case she tried to deny it. I sent them to my number on WhatsApp, then I marked her messages as unread and erased all traces. I couldn't even face her because that night I had a hard time accepting it. I couldn't sleep all night, and the next morning my head was about to explode. She noticed that I was a bit cold and distant towards her, but she was convinced that once we met our families, we would be fine. We met at her parents' house on the second Saturday of every month. When we arrived at her parents' house, I tried not to ruin this happy moment and waited until lunchtime to speak up. While we were eating, I asked her if she had seen her ex-husband recently. This question surprised everyone. She answered with a smile that she hadn't seen him since the divorce. At that point, my hands were shaking, and her parents noticed. I could no longer control my anger and shouted at her, explaining that I had seen the screenshots on her phone when she had gotten my phone and read the messages. She opened her mouth wide and immediately started to cry. Meanwhile, I had sent all the screenshots to our joint family group chat, and everyone was shocked. I wasn't the only one who was disappointed. Her parents felt so ashamed and disappointed that they shouted at her, explaining what I had said. I didn't do anything, I just cried. After I exposed her in front of her parents and my parents, I walked out of the house. She tried to follow me, but I left her behind, and she didn't go home that night. The next day, I packed all her things and took them to her parents' house, then left. She came to my house a week later and begged me to forgive her. She even threw a little tantrum when I got into my car and drove off. I didn't care. Eventually, we got divorced, and she's been miserable ever since. Her infidelity also affected the relationship between our two families. I'm no longer as close to her mother as I used to be. It's been 4 years, and I'm glad I didn't back down because of her infidelity. I'm currently seeing a woman who wants to get married, but we're taking things slowly. As for Sarah, she discovered that her ex-husband had only used her as a plaything and had abandoned them both without even marrying his girlfriend. She hasn't been in a relationship since.